So it took us a while to start this recording here because I'm sitting here looking at Danilee and she has tears in her eyes, completely broken right now. It's been a year since that time I got a call from you. And it's a sad story because I remember working and I had to pull away because I couldn't understand you. You were boo-hoo crying, crying. And I'm looking at you right now. It's almost like you're replaying that moment all over again.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that time you called me and you told me, you're like, she's dead. Sad story, y'all. It's losing a friend, murder, suicide, dealing with that. And I'm looking at you in tears right now because you're dealing with so much regret, almost as if you knew it was coming, but it's like, why would it happen so close to home? Why would it happen to your friend? Someone, it's stories, it's movies that we watch.
Literally
And
movies.
it's a story. You Googled it, you went on the news and you realized, like, whoa, just like that. Something that you see in movies happens so close to home. And I can see like it's even bothering you right now.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
I hope I can. I was the one who said like, "Oh, we should, it's a year. I think I need to talk about it." Um, of the things that I wish I would have done differently. And now I'm like, "Wait, can I get through this episode?" Um, but it was a Saturday night. I was getting ready for church the next morning. I just put the kids to bed. I was blow drying my hair and you were out of town. And the message popped up from Facebook, which I don't normally get messages on Facebook unless it's like older people sending me messages on Facebook. And it was a girl that I used to work with 15 years ago. Well, not quite 15 years ago, maybe like 13, 12 or 13 years ago. And it just popped up and said, I can't help but think about you so much lately. Um, it's so sad what happened to this other friend that worked with us as well. And I wrote back right away and I was like, "What do you mean what happened to that friend?" And I couldn't wait for her response and I Googled my friend's name. I had been friends with this girl over 10 years.
And just also, just for disclosure, like we're not going to share her name because
Yeah,
this this
it is so
conversation
fresh.
this conversation today is not really even about her. This
Yeah,
conversation is about us as friends and what we could have done to perhaps even prevent something like this. Like we
yeah.
felt it coming. So let's just for today's sake, let's call her. I mean, let's call her Jane.
Jane, okay. And
Jane.
I do wanna also just really respect her family and anyone who's attached to like, was connected to her as well, so I don't want it to be about her, but there are definitely things that I've really had to deal with that I wish I would have done differently with her, and so I've grown a lot, since this happened, and so I wanted to share those things of how it's affected me and how I've hopefully become a better friend after this, but, so I Googled her name and found out that she had been murdered from her fiancé, um, and that he then killed himself as well, and, known her for 10 years. We knew each other before we had any kids. She had had 3 kids before she passed, um, and so she was a friend that knew Jesus, knew the Lord when she was younger. Um, in the last few years, she had sent her kids to Christian school, so I really do hope that. Um, I don't know what her relationship was with the Lord before she died. And so that was one of the really hard challenges. Um, but knowing, like looking back, as soon as I heard the news and read the news, conversations that I had had with her just went played back in my head. Conversations of that person, she literally said, Jane literally said, um, "If I ever leave him, he'll make my life a living hell." And I remember the moment, the spot she was standing in. I remember all of that. Um, and so it was part of me was like, I knew that he was no good. I just didn't know how bad he really was. I didn't have any idea that he was physically abusive, but I had seen the emotional abuse of how he was to her. And so I really do wish that I would have pushed harder to ask those harder questions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I just want to encourage us. to be good friends, like, ask those uncomfortable questions. Ask those
Yeah.
hard questions.
I'll never forget that night we were staying at her house. This was like their second house,
Yeah.
and they were working on another house. And we went to Florida to visit family. We're hanging out, and I remember they were gonna go out, hang out. They did like a date night. I think we did a date night too, and we had a
So,
babysitter.
yeah.
So they went
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, they went out. We went out, and then we had a babysitter come
For
stay
all the kids.
with all the kids. And
Yeah.
then when we came home, we obviously came home before them. We released the babysitter, and we kind of hung out. We stayed. You and I stayed up, and she came home crying in tears,
Yeah.
barefooted, mascara, just a straight mess. And we're like, "What's happening?" And she's cussing up a storm. "I'm done with him. I'm done with him. I'm done. This happens every time. Like he's abused, all this stuff, like going down the whole list." It just upset and frustrated. And we kind of just stood there and just like, "It's okay, it's okay, it's gonna be all right. Like, what's going on? What happened? You guys were at the event." He said a bad I think insulted her, called her names, or her image called her fat, which she was not fat,
Not
not
anywhere
nothing.
close by it.
Calling her all these names, just like all these abusive things, and she's like, "I'm just done. I'm done putting up with it. I'm out of here. I already have money saved, stashed." She had money stashed the way that he didn't know about. The relationship was already abusive, like codependent, like like a lot of manipulation, narcissist,
A
like
lot, yeah.
abuse was coming from both sides too. And I remember just looking at both of them um, earlier that day and just thinking, like, man, like you guys have put each other in a prison cell. Both of you guys were in a prison cell. But I remember she was our friend. She was the one that we knew.
Yeah.
She was the one
We
that
didn't know him at all, really.
we cared for him. Or we cared for him because she
Yeah.
she lived with him. You know what I mean? And but I remember that night. It was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We're sitting there in the middle of her kitchen. She's like, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna take the kids and all this stuff." And she was going back and forth, back and forth. But here's what I remember. I remember sitting there saying, like, "I think you just do it. Just do it. Pack up the kids, go live with your mom, whatever you have to do, just do it." But here's what the biggest thing is. I remember looking at you, babe, and I remember the feeling of you kind of tiptoeing. You kind of like, because you're a feeler and you can feel how much she's heartbroken.
Yeah.
And y- I remember looking at you like, "Well, like, what are you gonna do? Like, what do you think we do? Like, you guys should try, you and I remember looking at you, I'm like, "Come on, babe, come on, you can do it. It doesn't matter what I say, she's your friend."
Yeah. And I mean, the way I grew up, and I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana, a lot of us Midwesterners were known for just being, um, like, overly cautious or, like, more standoffish. Like, we want to, like, love hard and help, and we're there for anything, but we also are very like, "Oh, I don't wanna, overstep boundaries. I don't wanna impose. I don't wanna be, like, inconvenient for you." And so, I was still at that place
Yeah.
where, I didn't wanna overstep. I would say certain things of like, "Hey, why would you do that?" I would question certain decisions she made in that toxic relationship. Also, I've never been in a toxic relationship like that, so I don't know what those survival mechanisms are. I don't know, like, "I have to do this or else they will do that." Like, I don't really know that dynamic, and so I was watching from the outside, but since then, I had another encounter with another friend. Um, that friend had actually had a miscarriage and lost, um, a pregnancy, and I did the Midwestern thing. I gave her space. I
Yeah.
let her be, and years later, that friend was like, "I was actually really disappointed in you," and I was like,
Mm,
How? Why?" And she was like, "Because I didn't want space. Like, I wanted you to just be there for me." And that was the biggest light bulb for me. Like, number 1, I was so appreciative. She actually told me. I would have never known that I let her down
right.
if she hadn't told me. And number 2, that must have been uncomfortable for her to tell me. Like,
Mm,
that would be hard for me to tell you, "You let me down.
yeah.
You didn't do what I needed from you." So I was really, really appreciative of that. And so it must have been hard for her to say that. It must have been so
Right.
uncomfortable for her to verbalize those things to me. It would be hard for me to verbalize that to a friend like, "Hey, you actually let me down." But I would just as a friend, I would say just lean in hard.
Right.
Like, I would so much rather be a friend that is, I'm gonna put air quotations, too supportive, because I don't even know if that's a thing,
Right.
but I would rather be a friend that's too supportive than a friend who had to tell me later on that you weren't there
Yeah.
for me. And so I would just, that's one thing I've learned as well, of just lean in hard. Like, I would rather be a friend. I do wish I would have fought harder for, what'd we call her, Jane?
We called her Jane.
I wish I would have fought harder for her because she did deserve better.
Yeah.
She didn't need that guy.
Yeah.
She didn't need him.
And
And I wish I would have fought harder for her to know her worth.
and so one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation in front of everybody because we've already come to a place in our relationship as husband and wife, as friends, to be the friend that we want to be.
Yeah.
Um, be the friend that you want to be the friend that you want to have, and be that friend that you're proud to say, man, my friend came after me, right? You don't want to go through a situation where you realize that, man, my friends backed out on me or stepped away on me because we don't know how to support people, right? In a moment like that, babe, I get it. You probably didn't know what to do. You probably didn't know what to say,
Yeah.
right? And so what happens is a lot of times because we don't know what to do, because we don't know what to say, then we kind of back off. But
Yeah.
that's not the friend that you want to have.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? We always talk about, and here's what I meant by, like when I said earlier, be the friend that you want to be, right? Because a lot of times we always say statements like, man, I just want to be, or I wish I was, or I just want to be that person. And what I'm saying is be that person.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what it's going to look like, even if it's going to be reckless,
Yeah.
like be that person that you always talk about that you want to be. And I get it. We back out, but it's one of the biggest things that causes regret. And that's why we're even having this conversation. It's because right now we have these conversations of like, man, I wish I would have, or I should have. But here's the thing. All the signs was showing itself.
Yeah.
They were evident. And like you just said, to lean in. It's really, a lot of times we do a lot of passive listening, or we're doubtful. We're like, man, that would never happen. The thought happens, the image happens. We knew that friend, she was in an abusive relationship. And I get it. We didn't know if it was physical abuse,
Right.
but we saw the emotional abuse.
Right.
We saw the mental abuse. It just keeps, it's downward from there.
Yeah. It's true.
And we saw those little signs, but we were in denial. And I remember thinking like, man, I was like, I saw the like the look in this guy's eyes. I knew, I was like, man, this guy, like he has some issues and it can get bad from here. And I'm that type of friend, and you know this about me. I'm that type of friend that I just do not want to have regrets. I just want to be that person where I could walk away and say like, man, I spoke my piece.
Right.
I
And
had
you've been that way with friends.
I've been that way with friends. I had a guy, he was a friend of mine, and he got this girl pregnant, and he's like, I'm gonna do the right thing. And I'm like, I think I know what you're about to say, but tell me what you think the right thing is. I'm gonna marry her. I was like, really? Pregnant marriage? Like, look, I'm not saying that you should marry her. I'm not saying that you should marry her, but I'm saying like, what do you consider to be the right thing? You've been doing the wrong thing this whole time already.
Right.
You was having sex with this girl outside of marriage, outside the way that God intended it to happen. So for you to say, I'm gonna do the right thing now, I was like, man, that child does not need two parents that hate each other.
Right.
That child needs two supportive parents. So I'm not telling you to not marry her. But when he told me the reasons why he should, I was like, I'm not suggesting that right there. So I said, look, I'm gonna speak my piece and I'm gonna forever hold my peace. I was like, do you love this woman? Is she the one that you want alongside you? Can you answer these type of questions? He's like, well, no, I don't really love. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna speak my piece. I was like, I don't think you should marry this girl.
Well, because in a lot of times in that situation, they think marrying corrects the mistake they made that put them in the situation in the first
Right.
place. And marriage doesn't go backwards. It
Yeah.
doesn't like, oh, that rectifies that since they got pregnant without marriage and then they got married. Now they're okay.
And what
Like it doesn't save that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't do that.
and
Only
what I w-
Jesus does.
and what I would hate is for me to see years down the road that this guy marries this girl, abusive relationship. They hate each other. The kid grows up in a broken home. They see two parents that are always
Right.
fighting, always against each other.
And in an abusive
And now
home.
I'm regretful because like, man, I knew it, I saw it, and I never said anything. How many times, babe, have you been in those situations where you had a friend, same thing happened. She got pregnant, she was shacking up with some dude, playing house, and you knew exactly what was gonna happen. They were just doing their thing, living life, doing whatever they want to do. And you're like, man, she gonna get knocked up. And you never said anything.
And she got knocked up.
And she got knocked up. And the guy
And
left her.
before she even had the baby.
And guess what? You regret. You look back, you're saying, like, I knew it too.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Be that friend that you want to be. Be that friend that you want to have. Lean in. What do you have to lose had you told Jane, like, Jane, look, I love you. And this guy, he's not good for you. You deserve better. And listen, you might hate me for this. And that's okay. You might hate me for this. I just can't sleep at night knowing that you're sleeping alongside a man that is abusive. And we know how this ends. I'm going to be that friend and say, leave him, whatever it takes. And here we are a year later. Guy kills her.
Yeah.
Kills himself.
Yeah.
They have
And
3 kids.
I will say, like, I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have been able to convince her that she deserved to be loved better. Like that was a hard part, and it's still a part of healing from her death, of like realizing she never got to know what true love felt like.
Yeah.
Like she never had a healthy relationship. And so even her relationship prior to this guy was abusive physically, but she didn't tell us until she was not with that guy anymore. And so there's even a cycle in her life of abusive relationships. So I should have known, and I should have seen the signs, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And I should have asked hard questions. And since her death in the last year, man, I've asked people if they're safe. Even if they are in the best relationship, I don't care. Like if they come to me crying over a relationship, I am straight in their face like, are you safe? Does he hurt you? I have asked more women, does he hurt you? And are you safe since this experience? And I don't care if it's too far. It's like I said, lean in hard. I'm going to lean in hard. And someday it'll pay off. I mean, honestly, hopefully it never does. Hopefully I never have someone have to tell me that they're in an abusive relationship. But from now on until the end of my days, like I would so much rather ask someone, hey, does he hurt you? Are you safe?
Yeah.
And that I be a safe place for someone to say like, he has hurt me once or he won't do it again, you know, like, cause then they start unraveling and then it comes out a little bit. So I have full out, like, I'll say this may be too far and this may be a lot, but I'm just going to ask you, are you safe? Does he hurt you?
I guess my question is like, what's the fear that would handicap you or make you paralyzed in the sense where just like as a friend that gets stuck, that just like, I just can't say it. Or I can't like, because a lot of times friends, we see it, we know it, we see what's happening. Right. And like, what's the fear? Like what plays in your mind? Why you like,
it's literally
couldn't
goes
say
back.
something.
It literally goes back to like that Midwestern mindset of like, I don't want to be in your business. And I literally have to tell myself, no, I'm going to get in your business real quick. Like I have to be that friend that's going to get messy with you. And I'll be that safe place. But I have to consciously make that decision. I'm going to get in your mess right now because you came to me crying for whatever reason. So to me, that gives me permission to ask you a messy question. So like it just has to be that conscious decision of like, hey, I'm going to be in your mess real quick. You safe? Does he hurt you? Has he ever hurt you before? Are you okay? Do you need a place to stay? Like I'll be in the mess. I'll get in the mess with you. And with Jane, I didn't get in deep enough. I dipped my toes. I'd ask certain questions of like, what about this? Or like, are you sure? Why would you do that? That's that's kind of dishonest. Like, are you sure you need to do that? And then I would back off because my friend Jane was so she's a spitfire, and she was short and
Yeah.
tiny, but she was a firecracker,
Yeah.
and to her, no one of would have ever hurt her.
Yeah.
Like, she would have never
Yeah.
let someone take her
Yeah.
life.
And a lot of that is that's what you think. That's what you think
Right.
about because we show ourselves to people in one form, right? You know, I was telling someone the other day about someone like me. I'm like, because a lot of times I'm sure of myself, most people don't ask me, "Are you sure?"
Hmm, interesting.
And actually, I wish more people would ask me, like, "Are you sure?
Hmm,
Do you know?" I'm that type of person in a group where I ask a lot of people, like, "Where do you see yourself? What are you trying to inspire? Like, what are you trying to do?" But most people don't ask me that. And I want to encourage people that are in relationships. Like you're in a relationship with someone, somebody's your friend. Like Danilee said earlier, like really lean into your relationship with people. Like if you go home at night and you're in your bed or you're sitting on your couch and you're really meditating on your relationships with somebody and you realize like man you're concerned about decisions that they're making, you're concerned about choices that they're making, you are now obligated to at least lean in and ask that person a question. I had a friend that he was going to marry this girl and I just didn't think it was a good idea. And one time we're in a car, we're driving together, we're going to a band rehearsal, and I said, "Hey, bro, you know I love you, right? You know I care for you. So you know my heart, you know that, and only a real friend's gonna say this to you." And I said, "I'm just gonna say it to you. I'm gonna speak now, and I will forever hold my peace." I said, "Don't do it, bro. Don't do it." He was like, "No, it's good for me. I feel really good about it. I just, but he's like, I thank you, I appreciate it." I said, "Hey man, look, I as your friend, I don't see it for you. And if you see it for you, um, I'll come alongside you. But I just want you to know I did not agree with the decision. And that's okay for friendships. Like if you really care for somebody, you really love somebody, what do you have to lose by speaking the truth? What do you have to lose by asking? I think you're going to say like later on to ask tough questions, right?
Yeah,
I said I had this other buddy of mine like he's getting ready to date this girl, and I was like, "Is she the one?"
right.
He's like, "I don't know." I said, "Oh, I'm just going to ask, is she the one? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? What are you trying to do?" Those are tough questions, but you know what? Anyone that's in a relationship with me, like I want to know that you're not just going to be a yes man in my corner. I want to know that you could step into my life and say, "Hey, I'm gonna ask you some really tough questions," and I appreciate that. Like, you know what I mean? And so I love the fact that we're having this conversation because I know it's a hard one, babe.
Yeah,
But we've had this conversation so many times of like, babe, be that friend, be that friend, be that friend. You have
yeah.
nothing to lose, right?
Yeah. And so I just it has caused a lot of growth over the years of how I am a friend, how I come alongside people, how I ask questions when people do open up to me like, hey, are you, even asking people about, are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you safe? Are you okay? Do we need to call in? Like, what do we need to do? Like, getting in that mess and just getting over myself, honestly. I don't care what people think. I don't care what, I'm going to go the extra mile to help my friend and to
Yeah.
be that support person and to not judge them in that mess. Because obviously, most of these situations are messy. And so I think all of the all of the topics and conversations of what we've had today and those situations were all messy, all
Yeah.
of the above. And so knowing like, hey, I'm gonna be a real friend and I'm gonna get in the mess with you and I'm gonna fight for you.
Yeah.
Um, I just would encourage people, listen well, listen through the words that people are saying. Sometimes that like there were hints there. It was just behind all these words and behind this facade. So listen well, get in the mess, ask the hard questions, um, and lean in hard. Be a hardcore friend of like who went over and above. I'd rather someone tell me, "Hey, you can back off. I'm okay." Okay, you're good.
Okay.
I'd rather you tell me back off than where were you?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't I can't live with someone saying, "Where were you? I needed you."
Yeah. I think one of the biggest regrets, or actually, let me say this. I think regret is a cancer. I think regret is one of those things that only God can cure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about this much in today's chat. We'll talk about it later on, but a lot of you guys know, maybe you don't even know. My mom passed away a little bit over a year ago, and I have zero regrets when it comes to my relationship with my mom. Like her and I, we were really close. We were tight. Um, Sometimes she would call me and I wouldn't pick up. Sometimes she'd call me, it'd be a few minutes. Sometimes I'd call her back, we play phone tag. She called me baby, or love. She cared for us. But I have no regrets my whole entire life. And I do have some siblings that are going through regret.
Right.
And they probably haven't identified it as regret, but they're acting up like certain things because they wish they would have, they should have. I wish I should. All this wishful thinking. And
Yeah.
last thing, like we have to understand, is like we can never go back in time to adjust things. The only thing that we could do is move forward.
Yeah.
If our relationships, all the friends that we encounter, all the people that we encounter in our lives, people that we decide to say, hey, I want to walk alongside you, right? You guys gonna hear that phrase quite often in this channel. Walk alongside you. If you're walking with me, like here's that word again, hold me accountable. What I don't want you is for you to walk further on and saying like, man, you know what I should have said in the past. So all the relationships. So I look at my relationship with my mom like I have zero regrets, and I my heart goes out to everybody that is walking in regret. I want to encourage you to put that regret in the hand of God. He's the only one that can literally take it, crush it, make it go away. Make it go. He can make it go away because you cannot move further in any relationships when all you're doing is thinking back on what you wish you would have done or could have done or should have done. It's over. There's nothing else you can do. But what you can do is move forward and make the adjustments, like you just said, babe, in all your relationships moving forward. Because that regret, it's a cancer. It can kill you.
Yeah.
It stays in your body and it eats at you.
And regret is just a part of grief as well. Like grief and regret go hand in hand sometimes. In this case, it does. So as I'm grieving my friend, I'm dealing with that regret. And you're right. I just have to give it to the Lord to know, like, it's part of like letting go, right? Like
Yeah.
grief, you have to let it go. You have to like go through the motions and you have to come to terms with what is. And so that goes right with grief and regret all together. And then knowing, like, okay, now I'm going to
Yeah.
change who I am and how I wish I would have done it
Mm,
from this point forward.
that's so good. That's so good. So I want to take a moment and just encourage everybody that if you're dealing with regret, if you're dealing with grief, if you're dealing with things that you just wish you would have done, I just want to encourage you, man. Put it in the hand of God. Reach out to us. Honestly, send us a message. Like tell us, like, hey, here's some things that I'm dealing with. We'll pray for you. I mean, we'll pray for you. We'll connect with you. Like we want to do this together. If this channel you feel like is bringing you life, giving you any kinds of value, like I want to encourage you. Like come alongside us, hit that subscribe button, share, like send it to somebody, like screenshot it, hit save, like whatever it takes. But I want to encourage you, like let's come alongside each other. I believe that relationships is a gift from God. I believe that it's something that God has given to every single one of us. If you look back in the Bible, right from the day one, God had relationship with man, every single one of us. And so I want us all to do this together, baby, even for us as we're walking alongside each other, holding each other accountable. You guys going to hear a lot of these common themes right now because this is how we have healthy relationships. It's relationships with God, it's relationship with others, and it's a relationship with yourself. So go easy on yourself. Go loud on yourself. Cut yourself a break. Relax sometimes. Laugh a little bit. Chill. But let's do this together. So subscribe, like, send this to somebody if this gives you value, and let's continue to dig.
Let's dig.